I'm here.
Welcome, everybody. I am Tirza Hollenhorst, the CEO of LUMAN, and I am so excited to be here today. I'm here with Jan Beranek, who is the founder and CEO of U+. U+ is a corporate innovation venture building company based out of the SF and Prague, and Jan has brought over 80 products to market over the past 7 years. He's also a mentor for Google in the SF and the European Space Organization in the EU. Jan has an extensive experience in the topic we're going to be exploring today, which is feasibility. Thanks for joining us, Jan.
Thanks for having me.
Jan, you work with both corporations and with startups. And so in today's conversation, we are going to explore the differences in your experience in working with those two different types of organizations. And so first, let's just talk about how you think about testing for feasibility as you're bringing products to market, first with corporations.
Right. So we have a process we call U+ method that goes from I have no idea to have an idea to I know what a value proposition for that idea is, and then I know what the product is, right, that I want to build. If I have no idea what I want to do, there are basically two ways, push and pull way of getting those ideas. The pull way is basically just ideation, working with the people that are inside the corporation, trying to understand if there's anything that's already existing that we can build on top and work with the people. The push way is essentially doing two things, looking at things like Crunchbase, PitchBook, all of these places where you have data about startups, and look at those startups that demonstrate some sort of attraction. So meaning, for example, periodic raises, right? Series A, B, C, and looking at their business model and understanding how that business model could be applied to that particular company. That's one. The other one is looking at other corporations in other countries, because a lot of corporate innovation is also driven by regulation. So regulation moves at different pace at different countries. So there are examples of we've done things in Germany and Czech Republic because of disintermediation of the energy market. Suddenly people were able to sell on somebody else's grid, which was impossible before. That's 4 or 5 years ago. The same thing just happened in Switzerland this year, right? And they're solving the exact same challenges. So you can find learning in different countries, depending on the pace of regulation, and sort of the Crunchbase stuff and this sort of other corporation stuff gives you a basket of ideas that you can then go and test on the market. So now we're at a stage where we have one way or another, we've gotten some ideas. So how we test them on a market, how do we get to a value proposition? Essentially, the two big filters for this are who are we building it for and where. So, for example, if you want to build for senior citizens in Spain, it's probably not going to be something about Instagram or TikTok. If those business models include that, or something on social media, it's going to be probably something different, right? So looking at what is your target audience and target geography filters out a ton of those. And then with the rest, what you're trying to do is sort of rank them in order of what's the most probable thing to succeed on that market, given the market research that you've done, given high-level user journeys, customer journeys that you have, defining what the persona would be, and sort of what the high-level business case would be for the value proposition that you're trying to create. When you have those and pick a couple of those, you go into market testing. If it's a B2C or a B2B product, it's slightly different. For a B2C product, what we do is something called fake doors test or smoke test, which means you essentially do a large multivariate testing of microsites. So you build a microsite as if the product was already built. It looks relatively nice enough. And then you test everything from communication, branding, pricing sensitivity, different ways of having people sign up for that service. And at the end, you basically thank them if they do all of that, which is great. That's what you're looking for. You thank them and say, hey, this is going to be launched in 2-3 months. What that allows you to do is uncover the conversion funnel, and of course, you drive traffic from Google, Facebook, all of these places to these microsites. So what that allows you to do is sort of get to conversion funnel numbers, understand cost of acquisition until a certain stage in that funnel, and plug those numbers into the business case that you're creating. And if you have all of these different versions of the product, you then compare and contrast and see which ones are the best, to continue with, given those business cases. So that's sort of the rough start for the B2B. You typically can't take the shortcut with microsites, and you need to do a lot of user testing, face to face, so
Right.
over Skype now.
And how does that vary when you're working with a startup?
It's simpler in the sense that we don't have to do the education piece on the corporate side. Don't have to create a lot of artifacts for the internal side of the corporation, so people to get new budgets and to summarize all of the learning for people who are not necessarily part of that project, that need to have it in a bite-sized format. So if you're working with a startup, you're not working with an operator, you're working with an entrepreneur. So it's just, it's just easier. It's part of the team. The process is just shorter. It's not different steps, it's just shorter.
Shorter. What I love about the feasibility phase is it's very much a scientific phase. It's really just this testing of assumptions and measuring and setting things up to test. And I just appreciate the rigor that you really bring to that whole approach. Tell me about the biggest challenges that you have faced in working with corporations, especially at this phase of the game.
Right. So it's why, how, and who, but most of our Leos say it's the who. So having the stage relevant teams to be able to execute, and what I mean by stage relevant teams, people who know how to execute the initial research and do the ideation, and then do the necessary stuff to build the business case and go and test on the market and build, and then go build out those microsites or go do that customer research at a speed that's they basically need, right? So the worst case that can happen to you is you get a budget or you get an investor, and you go and spend the money on one learning. You are super, like 95% of startups fail or 90% even. In corporations, it's even worse, and not better. So the worst case scenario is you spend all of your money on one learning. You are not likely to get, you're not likely to crack the business model and what the product should be, crack the product market fit with just one learning. So the important piece is trying to form hypotheses about what it is you're trying to learn on the market, and trying to design the smallest possible tests in terms of time and money that will give you those results that get you closer to understanding how that market works and how the potential customer works, and what are the features of the product that you're trying to build that they care about, so that you can build them back. So that, and I mean by we run these microsites and we iterate like every day or every second day based on the data that we're getting. That's typically not a speed that any corporation is ready to move at. So having the right people who are able to do this kind of work, and I mentioned earlier operator versus entrepreneur. You have a ton of super great people in corporations that are operators. You have an existing product, you have an existing product, improve it. You get bigger budgets, you make more revenue, great. For an innovation, you need entrepreneurial types that don't need, this is what my KPIs are for Q1, and I know exactly what I need to do to meet them. It's more, here's my rough idea of what I want to build. I want to understand as quickly as possible what's the path to building it, and it's just a different mindset. Even though the position might be very similar, the title of the position might be very similar. It's just a different mindset.
Yeah, you were speaking about that earlier, and I love that distinction between the operator and the entrepreneur. And this is one of the reasons we really think of mindset, especially for those kind of entrepreneurial people and really identifying the people who are ready to have those mindsets within the organization and ready to take on this kind of really rapid work, which really means a willingness to be wrong, and a willingness to learn is one of the key aspects of driving these projects forward successfully. And how do you find that differs in the world of the startup, the challenges that you're facing?
Oh yeah, so in corporates, it's mostly speed and the team, right? So be able to keep up with the pace. In startups, it depends on what, let's say, the competitive advantage of that particular person's skill set is, right? So you have people who are very, very technical, who will go and try to build out the product sooner than they understand what the market really wants, and they keep pushing for it. And we always say you can't buy product market fit with investment in tech, just that, at least at the early stages. And then you have then you have business-oriented people that don't understand any part of that. I know it's crude facsimile, but you have these are sort of the extreme sides. So you have the business people who don't understand tech and need somebody to tell them if it takes a day, an hour, or a month, and you can produce explanations for any of those time frames. But what is the one that makes sense? We would say you can build a house in a day, in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. It just depends what kind of house it is. Do you need to just stay overnight, or do you plan on living your life in it, right? So making that sort of distinction as to what to invest in and helping those people sort of cover their blind spots is typically what we need to do on setting expectations in different areas of startup development.
Nice, thanks for sharing. Those are really important and key distinctions for any organization, but especially those in those early stages. And it's been such a year of change, and I always think of downturns as as great years to think about doing new things, because new opportunities open up, old things that were working sort of fall away. So there's just this time frame where typically, at least in the US, new businesses, a lot more new businesses start in downturns than in other times. And I'm just curious, how has this year really affected you and your mindset and how you think about things?
So I think there are two tracks for me. One is just U plus our normal business. So what it meant is I think it just accelerated things that we were expecting to come within the next 2 years. So we moved completely remote. We had a large, I think, 10,000 square foot office in Prague. We just dropped. Nobody wanted to be there anymore, and first couldn't, and then when we sort of could, everybody sort of, we wanted to be remote anyways. So we dropped that office. So we're fully remote. We brought on a lot of people in the US and Canada as well. Started new partnerships. So yes, I think it's for us. We knew that if we get through the initial wave, and now maybe the second one, at least in Europe, it's definitely impacting business. We're going to be very, very well positioned, because the kind of work that we're doing previously was maybe on the fringes of innovation. Now it's the core. There are industries that completely need to change and need this kind of skill set, like retail, automotive, travel. All of these we see the highest uptick in. We need to, our revenues dropped by 80%. Like, what do we do? So that's one track. So I think we're fighting, and it's been going relatively well. And the other one is more I was trying to focus on and doing research on social impact, whatever your definition of that is, and sustainability and things like that. And my big change, because we've done 9 months of research and published a 50-page report that's on my LinkedIn about a month ago. So what my big sort of mindset shift was that I thought that social impact is just its own category somewhere else, somewhere outside, and after doing that research and finding out it's just unnecessarily convoluted, and there's sort of shortcuts and ecosystems that you can sort of build into, that it's more like an aspect of the way you do business. If you subscribe to the fact that you can generate impact and profit, which data shows you can. That's also an entire discussion that's kind of fruitless to have.
Mm-hmm.
So you can. And it took us 2 months to figure out. And how to measure it, that's also easy how to do it. So it's more an aspect of how you do business. And I think an aspect that was forgotten, or it was not prioritized, or it was, it's a CSR kind of thing. But now after having spent 9 months doing the research on this, it's more, how do we build that thinking, and how do we build new ventures that are sustainable and impactful, and generate more positive in the world than just profit.
I love hearing your thinking on this, and it's been a joy to witness your own evolution. And I just really think we're moving into a time where, for the consumer and for the business, the real license to operate, the trust factor that's going to keep businesses in business is how people feel about your impact. Are you bringing us into a world that works or not? Because regardless of the kind of contention at the current moment here in the States and beyond, I do really believe that the arc of where we're moving is that we want to live in a future that works. And we can see that if we don't shift both our businesses and our ways of working together and what we're creating together, we won't have a world that works. And I am delighted that your immense amount of research has shown that that's actually also where things are heading for you and for the work you're involved in. Anything else you want to share, Jan?
I would say I would just leave the people who are tuning into this with a couple of quotes that we always say. We try to not write any code before we know somebody's going to pay for the thing that we're trying to build, which essentially means we're doing a lot of testing upfront. That's cheap. There's a ton of things cheap to execute, cheap in terms of cost, and cheap in terms of time. So you should always think about how to maximize the amount of information you're getting from the smallest amount of work that you can put into it, or cost that you can put into it, so that it informs where you want to go with the venture that you're trying to build. And oftentimes the answer to that is immediately people jump, oh, we need a nicer website or something. It's typically not that. It's, do we know what our customers want? Do we know where they are? Do we know how to reach them? And do we know what the mix of the things that they're telling us, or the mix of the things that they're telling us, does it manifest in some sort of a product that they would be willing to pay for? And actually asking for, how much would you pay for it, under what conditions, and things like that. So I feel both in startups and in corporations, the spirit is skipped almost all the time. And it's changing. It's good, because it's just waste of money not to do this part, because you're going to build things that people don't want to use, and then you're going to be surprised why.
Jan, thank you for your just incredible wisdom. I know that from your perspective, this is why would you do anything else? And your process is so straightforward that it sounds obvious, but so many people get caught up in the idea of something and what they could create, and get busy building something long before they've actually taken the time to find out if it's something that their customer wants. And so I just really appreciate your relentless focus on learning from the customer. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next week and to talk about commitment. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.